Hello, Sunshine. I'm Alexi Lalas, and welcome to the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue colored glasses. You know them, you love them. This show is a live instant reaction of the just completed USA versus Japan game, which happened Tuesday. It was a friendly from Columbus, Ohio. Just finished USA 2, Japan 0, a 2-0 in Columbus. That's pretty cool. And again, we sit just 275 days away from the kickoff of the 2026 World Cup. Joining me, as always, my good friend, my colleague, my guiding light, David Mosse, a soccer savant and a Fox Soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire, and back again. He was here a couple days ago after that loss to South Korea. So we said, let's bring him back and see if we can bring him back and bring a smile on his face. Stu Holden. All right, gentlemen. For those that tuned into the live show after the Korea game, you saw me at my best or worst, depending on how you view it. And I was emotional. I was angry. I was, curious as to what had happened and then what was going to happen here tonight. And as the great Michael Corleone said in the not-so-great Godfather 3 movie, just when I think I'm out, they pull me back in, whether it's Pochettino or this team. A solid performance. However, if we are not supposed to read anything into not friendly games, evidently training sessions when it comes to this U.S. men's national team, and the only thing that ultimately matters is next summer and the World Cup, as the loss that happened a few days ago, the reaction that I had, then you don't get the benefit then when you actually play well. So it was a good training session. We saw some things. Is this the greatest team in the world? No. But in my expert opinion, gentlemen, winning is better than losing. What say you, Stu Holden, about this 2-0 win over there in Columbus?
Well, as high as you were the other day, or as low, I suppose, but as hot as you were, I don't think that this performance deserves this over-the-top amount of praise against a Japanese team that we'll talk a little bit was not their strongest team. This was a B bordering on a C. It was interesting, though, even in the lead up to this match, seeing Pochettino's demeanor, his comments towards the media, to the press, brushing back a little
We'll
bit.
get to those.
I
Don't
would
you
say.
worry. We'll get to
But,
those.
he went from, the results do matter and, we're competitors and we need to win. And then even at halftime of this game, he was like, look, the result is fine. We're winning 1-0, but we need to work on this, this, and this. So contextualizing all of that, it was fine. It was good. In fact, it was good. The U.S. won 2-0. They had a number of opportunities, even in the second half, to extend that lead and have some more goals.
But I should care. You're telling me I should care. Should I care about what just happened?
Care?
I wanted to care until a lot of the stuff that happened over the last few days, and evidently I'm not supposed to care, and all I'm supposed to care about is what happens next summer.
If we strip down the facetiousness and the sarcasm,
Okay.
I think we care, right?
It's hard not to care, my friend. It's hard not to care.
We're red, white, and blue. It's the State of the Union podcast. Is what it's all about. But
we'll care for you.
I was watching this game tonight. I was cheering in moments. There were some great passages of play, led to some great opportunities, and ultimately, yeah, winning feels good.
Yeah.
Even for this team, even in a friendly, even with some of not our guys that I don't think will be at the World Cup, this was a result that was a positive. And by the way, rolled out a back three, David Mosse. We've been screaming from the top of the rafters that this would be the best formation for the U.S. And my biggest takeaway before I kick it over to you was, let's stick with this formation. This is the best formation, the best system for the personnel for this pool. And I think there were enough positives and even the signals in the second half when he made the different subs. He didn't change the formation. He stuck with the 5 in the back.
Well, you have for, I think, a long time here been talking about it and beating on the let's get the back 3. And we saw that tonight. And sometimes a back 3 can be a back 5. But to your credit, this is something from a tactical perspective that you've recognized could benefit this team. And I think we saw some of that. Who knows if this is a continuation or if this was just kind of throwing something else into the mix. All right, David Mosse, do you care? Should we care?
As I watched this impressive performance tonight, all I could think of was, thank God I'm not the idiot that called for Pochettino to be fired. Boy, did he silence his critics tonight. But to Stu's point, we should give some context. Japan played Mexico the other night. It was a 0-0 draw. They played their best lineup in that game, and they rotated a lot for this game. So guys like Endo, Kamada, Mitoma, Minamino, your boy Kubo, none of them started. Some of them did come on as subs. So take that for what it's worth when analyzing this U.S. performance. But I did think it was impressive. They should have won by more than 2-0. That Japanese goalkeeper stood on his head in the second half. He had that McGlynn shot off the crossbar. Uh, but yeah, let's talk about the back three, which I know, to your point, it can sometimes be a back five, but today it wasn't because Freeman and Arfston were pushing up very high. And all I kept thinking watching that was, imagine if it was Dest and Jedi in those situations. So I agree with you. I do think it's worth sticking with this formation when you play with your strongest lineup, which would include Dest on the right and Jedi on the left. And perhaps a different center back than Blackman is that third guy. I mean, I'll ask you, who do you think is the ideal player to play alongside Richards and Ream if you play a back three?
You know, we didn't get a look at Banks. He was carrying a bit of a knock coming into this camp, so I'm still intrigued by the possibilities of him. But look, outside of that, we've seen Miles Robinson, we've seen Mark McKenzie, Cameron Carter-Vickers, like just go down the line. I mean, we've got a whole host of guys, so I'm not sure necessarily who I feel at this moment needs to be that guy. That's why I was very intrigued at the possibility of having Banks. What I will say was there were more positives than negatives when it came to this formation. There were definitely moments, though, where you could see this was the first time this group had played in this system because of just this disjointedness in moments of pressing from the front, not knowing whether Blackman should step in. Sometimes we saw Tim Ream stepping 30 yards from the Japanese goal. It actually led to one or two opportunities. But ideally, when that system is moving and flowing the way that it should be, you know, your outside backs and Freeman, or well, let's say if it's Destin, if it's Robinson, you're rotating around. They're getting pressure on the midfielder. You're shuffling. You have this great relationship, these partnerships across the field. So that would be my hope, is that Pochettino sees enough of a foundation and a base for this group of players to maximize their abilities, that now the next camp, you build from that, you plug in McKennie, Cardoso, whoever it might be, and then you start really drilling on the fine points of that formation. Then all of a sudden you start to piece something together, potentially with your 11 best players, that starts to resemble a good team that's not only good attacking wise, but doesn't concede chances. We conceded too many chances than you should have tonight.
But you're not saying playing a back three is something just to have in our back pocket. You're saying that this should be the preferred
this should be it.
and initial formation for the United States. So when they step on the field next summer, it would show up as a back three.
My biggest takeaway from the game tonight is that the back three, the back 5-3-4-3, that is your formation. No looking back. I don't want to see a back four again unless we're playing an inferior opposition. I just think that you need to drill this. You have limited opportunities, limited windows. And while you could play a little bit more of an attacking and tweak it more with a four against inferior opposition, against the best teams, this formation gives you the best chance to win.
Okay.
And that passing graph we showed there shows how disciplined, in fact, the U.S. were in that formation. And you could really see and visualize it right here when you have the three there. Look at to your point, Mosse, look where Freeman's position. It's a right winger. Arfston even high and wide on the left. So when you think of a three, don't think of a five. Think of it as having three in the back. It actually gives you an extra number in the attack. And now it gives you the freedom of what you saw from Pulisic to float, to get on the ball, to play those passes. And it's a good job by Balogun still seeing his average position being far. Even though you can see the lines there are thinner, it means he wasn't getting that much of the ball. Still was important in the moments to occupy center backs, to stay high, to stretch the game. And so, look, this was not an A-plus performance.
Oh, I know.
But it was
That's okay.
It was positive for that being the first time this team has started.
Should we go through the 11?
Yes. So Matt Freese started again in goal and had a terrific night, made some big saves.
Do you think he's the number one right now?
Making me sound foolish because I want to know how
well, there's a lot of foolishness then going on when it comes to the State of the Union.
So, yeah, I think right now he probably is the number one. Matt Turner has to win that job back. And then it was a back three of Blackman, Richards, Ream. And then you had Freeman right wing back, Arfston left wing back, Adams and Roldan in the central midfield. And then you had Pulisic and Zendejas floating behind Balogun. And let me ask you, if you stick with this formation, although Zendejas scored a beautiful goal tonight, I assume you don't see him as a starter. So who would be that other guy alongside Pulisic floating behind the center forward? You can go Tillman, you can go Weah, you could even go Gio if he can get himself back in form.
I would go with Tillman. I really like Tillman in that position and with the freedom and the flexibility. I would say probably your front runners for the two midfield positions would be Adams and then one of McKennie or Johnny. Johnny's not been great with the national team, up to him to win that spot back. The big key, though, is I prefer Johnny's tactical, savvy discipline in the middle versus Weston just loves to run around the field. And I think if you have those two positions, it has to be two really intelligent players that constantly are dialed into those moments. But also Weah could play where Zendejas did. He could play where Freeman did. He has the flexibility to kind of play in any of those positions, even actually where he's playing right now with his club team, left wing back. He could play where Arfston was because still, I don't know how you feel coming away. Arfston, great ball in for the goal for Zendejas.
He still looks
Zendejas,
uncomfortable. He still looks uncomfortable.
positive camp, though, for Zendejas. He was kind of out of the mix for Pochettino. He comes back in, he scores a great goal. He's a player that I would say nosed in front again for himself, not to be a starter, but to be back in this mix.
And Max Arfston, I know at times he has looked like he is playing out of position, and people can argue that he is playing out of position. I think this put him in better positions, but he still looks a little awkward. He still looks a little uncomfortable out there. However, on that goal, I have to give him not just credit, but thanks, because I think just in the modern game, the ability to take players one-on-one, and more importantly, to be successful, which he was, that was wonderful. That warmed my heart. That gave me, I mean, he's not the same player by any stretch of the imagination, but way back in the day, back in the 1900s when I was running around, Kobe Jones used to get the ball out wide, and you would isolate him. You don't go around, you don't overlap, you don't get into his way, because you knew that 9 out of 10 times he was going to beat the guy, and there was a potential cross coming. And for a forward, that's wonderful. So when he got isolated out wide, and you can see it here, he took the player on, that he beat him, that he created that separation, and then he gave a really nice ball, and the subtle way in which he brought it back against the grain made it that much better for a left-footed player who was playing on the right, and Zendejas, who took it great. To your point, Zendejas has not brought it for the national team level. I don't know if this is a sea change type of moment for him, but you can only do what you can do. And he, I'm sure, impressed Mauricio Pochettino with the goal, with the way that he played, but I certainly don't see him after this being a starter on the national team.
And if you're wondering what's become of Kobe Jones on Sunday morning, he was here calling the Georgia-Bulgaria
there
World
you
Cup
go.
qualifier. We'll get to European World Cup qualifying later in the show and what Erling Haaland did today. So Tillman would be alongside Pulisic, floating behind a center forward. I think Balogun was one of the winners of this window as well. He came on and played well as a sub against South Korea, looked much better than Sargent in that game, gets the start tonight. Should have scored in the first half, that double opportunity, that sequence that ended with a Roldan header. And then he does get his goal in the second half off a lovely assist by Pulisic, who I agree with you, had a terrific second half. His speed was just devastating. But do you agree that Balogun has more or less reestablished himself as the starter? And I think Pepe's that other guy that's going to try to overtake him.
Pepe will have a say when he comes back, but don't think for a second he didn't see what happened here. And keep in mind that Balogun's been out for a long time, and it was almost like getting a new player that he came in, and both, to your point, in both games, not just looked dangerous, but certainly in the second game, finished it well, which is what you want him to do. So I think, if I'm doing an instant power ranking right here, not to give anything away, but I think Balogun is right at the top right now. I think Pepe is certainly going to be up there when he comes back from injury, given where he is and how much he has improved. But it's good to have some really good competition up there for a position of need, obviously, but also a position where there hasn't been a whole lot of competition and nobody's really grabbed it yet. So Balogun, yes, I definitely think that he is one of the big winners when it comes to this camp.
You said it. It's competition, and we've had this competition up front, and nobody has grabbed that position. And that's that interesting balance between wanting to have a number of different players that are capable. And we've talked forever now, even since the last World Cup, where actually Josh Sargent was the starter. And then it was Haji Wright. Then it was Pepe. Then it was Balogun. And then it was Pepe. And then it was Balogun again. And it's just been this back and forth. And unfortunately for all of these guys, they've all had stretches of long injuries. Pepe's had the long knee. Sargent was in and out with ankles and hamstrings, and Balogun the same thing. And that's been the frustration, I think, for all U.S. fans is you see the potential, and Pepe was red hot. And boy, he looked so fun and confident under even Pochettino and the way he was scoring goals. And you felt like it was his position, and then he gets hurt. So that is going to be the position to look for. It's going to be the hot hand that will be going into the World Cup. I would actually prefer it not to be the hot hand. I would prefer it to be like, that's our guy, because he's hot, because he's confident, because he said, I'm going to do everything I can to make it impossible for Pochettino to take me out of the lineup. But I do see that battle spilling over to the spring. But as we've said before, Balogun's got two hands on the shirt right now. Can he keep it? I'm not sure, but I was encouraged about what he did tonight. When you get your chances as a forward, you got to finish them. That was the big thing.
Yep.
And one of the takeaways from South Korea, you got to be clinical. The second was, yeah, look, if you're not getting chances, can you be involved in the game? I was. I felt I saw him drifting wide on the wing, getting involved in the buildup. His back to goal play is important for a striker. So
and he's been out.
it's
He's
good.
been
Good
out for a
confidence.
while, and
Yeah.
they're changing. So
Yeah.
I know in the first half you were sitting over here and you were talking about the press or the lack of press or the lack of understanding of when to
Yeah.
press, and obviously that comes from the top of the spear, and not having a whole lot of coordination. I think that will come,
better.
although there's not a whole lot of time. None of these strikers that we have are great, but we'll take good at this point. And Balogun is good. Hopefully he has some competition. Yes, Mosse.
I do wonder if there's a Japanese Alexi Lalas ranting about playing out of the back, because Japan had a lot of giveaways.
Well, both teams
so
did.
do
Both
we, yeah.
teams did.
Yeah, Richards had a bad one in the first half that almost led to a goal. Freese denying Ito from close range. So yeah, there was plenty of fodder for playing out of the back critics like yourself.
So what I would say too is both teams were actually playing the same system, both making mistakes in different moments that led to opportunities for the other teams. It's always been my thing though with the US, when we were playing in that way and we want to build and we want to attract the opposition and create space. Either A, we weren't taking advantage of the space that was presented because we were overplaying, or B, when we turned the ball over, we were being punished. I think having that extra defender in there, you even saw Arfston one or two times when the US lost the ball, he's out of position, Ream slides, Richard slides, Blackman slides, and then you get your Freeman, you've got a back four again. So it just, again, having the extra man in the back affords us a little bit more, when you lose that ball, you can have a little bit more risk there.
We'll see if it lasts. I do take issue with your calling it a mistake. It's a teachable moment. Okay, this is there are no mistakes.
How very progressive
in a training session. You recognize that you're working on something and there's a greater goal, and it's important that once the training session is over, that then you take it to the games that actually mean something.
Poor Ann Lalas, by the way. Are you like this at home all the time too? My goodness.
It rubbed me the wrong way a little bit, some of the stuff. Should we move on to that, Mosse, or is there anything else you would like to get to when it comes to this game?
No.
I'm sorry, this training session.
I think we should discuss some of Pochettino's comments the last couple days, because they were fascinating. People like Doug McIntyre, Kyle Boone were reporting on them. Pochettino really took exception to some of the criticism he received after the South Korea loss. He said, if people sometimes want to talk about bullshit, they can talk about bullshit. To be critical is one thing, because I like the critics when you say things that are right, but when it's criticism for criticism, you're damaging your country and damaging your players. We need to be positive. We need to be together, because the country deserves that we are all on one side, trying to help arrive at the World Cup in the best condition and be competitive, to do something that makes our fans proud. I'll stop there. There's another quote I'm going to read you, but comment on that one.
Mosse, I know you speak Portuguese, but you also speak plenty of Spanish. How do you say violin in Spanish? Do you know? How do you say it in Portuguese?
Violina?
Is it?
Yeah.
All right. Do you know?
Stu?
Do you know? You're a big Spanish.
That
hasn't come up.
Learnings, I have
Well, anyway,
violin.
Pequeño violin. Okay, that's what's playing right now for Mr. Pochettino. All right, Mauricio. He needs, I think, somebody around him, because the stuff that he is saying, he's not helping himself by saying this kind of stuff. I recognize that he heard the criticism. I recognize that he is acknowledging the criticism. When I was with him last week in Ohio, he even, while we were speaking, made a point of saying, I recognize that people are going to criticize me, and he even turned to me and said that you are going to criticize me, and I certainly I certainly have. I also think that if anybody understands that it comes with the territory, he certainly does. When he says this, kind of runs counter to what he has been talking about, I think, for a long time, which is, creating more pressure and creating a situation where you are under pressure. When he talks about, the whole kumbaya and coming together, Mosse, I know you're going to get to some of that. It doesn't work. I think that the criticism that he and this team have come in for, whether it's after the game the other day or just in general as to what has happened with the amount of games that have been lost, with the lack of performance and results against better teams and elite teams of the world. I think it's absolutely justified. I think it's fair. It doesn't mean that he can't do great things come next summer, but this is not a good look for Mauricio Pochettino when he's saying some of this stuff. And I would want somebody in his ear saying, "Hey, maybe you want to go this direction," but he's going to do what he's going to do, I guess.
Stu, do you want to hear the
Uh,
second quote or comment on
Well,
that
I
one?
was just gonna say el violín is
El
the
violín pequeño. Okay,
pequeño
here we
violín.
go. El
Sí.
violín
Como
pequeño,
tú quieres,
Mauricio.
señor.
El violín pequeño.
All right. The second quote was given to Kyle Bond of the Sporting News. I said Kyle Boone before. That's because Sean Sullivan had it wrong in the rundown. By the way, his second major strike today. How about him sending us a clip from the Landon Donovan Tim Howard podcast and being like, "Boy, what a great chat this was." Does he not know those are our arch
Right?
rivals? We
Bad form.
can't stand those
Bad
guys.
form.
So here's the quote to Kyle Bond. Pochettino. Sometimes people want to talk only to analyze the result and want to be negative, and I think it's a little bit shameful. We need to be positive because we need to be all together because the country deserves to be on one side to arrive at the World Cup in the best condition, to be a team competitive, to make proud our fans. That is the most important thing.
All right. This concept of everybody being positive. In general, I can get behind having people have a positive and having an outlook that is positive relative to what is happening. All right, but you can't be Pollyanna. All right, you can have faith, but you don't have to have blind faith in Mauricio Pochettino or in this team, given what we have seen. You have to earn the respect of the American fan base, or any fan base for that matter. So when it comes to this team, I think too often they haven't. And to just blindly throw out, "Oh, but you have to support us." No, that's not how it works. Do you want people to support? Yeah, of course you want people to support. And I think after this game, there will be many that were, angry or depressed about what's going on. I'm not saying they could completely change their colors, but you go out and do something like this, it garners attention and positive attention going forward. But people aren't going to support you just because you say they should support you. People aren't going to support you just because everybody should be coming together. That's not how the world works. That's not how humans work, and that's not how it's going to work. And not, by the way, it's not how countries and cultures that are steeped in the game that we so often look to and maybe try to emulate function on a day-to-day, month-to-month, year-to-year basis.
One of the things that irks me with a lot of this is when, you hear this from players, current players and coaches, and they always say, "Well, I don't read anything and I don't see anything, but we know you see everything. We know your friends send you things. In fact, it's almost impossible to avoid these things. So can we stop pretending that we don't see it? If you take issue with certain people, call them out by name.
Yeah.
Have, what to say that to those people. And at the end of the day, I don't understand this notion where people feel that when we are negative, and I say we, the media, the press, and when we are in moments and we have to be critical, we try to be fair. I don't think we ever do this through the lens. I've never heard you saying, "Oh, I can't wait to bury this guy after the game. Oh, I'm licking my chop." We're doing it through a lens where A, we care, B, we're paid to do this. This is our job. And C, get up and deal with it. We've all been dealt with this as players. It's part of being a professional athlete. People are critical of your performances, win, lose, draw, whatever it may be. Do your job well, you get a pat on the back, you get your praise, but you can't take that and then not expect or get so upset when people are critical on the other side. And by the way, Pochettino getting upset about the results and the performances and this and that. You haven't given us much to be excited about. But if you did watch our Gold Cup coverage, and I know he's not saying us specifically, but we could not have been more bullish and excited about what that team did throughout that run. And of course, they lost to Mexico. So when there's good things to talk about, I like to think that we're fair. We're going to talk about those things. But look, sure, I would love nothing more over the next 8 months to be the most excited American soccer fan, analyst, and you know what, leading into that World Cup, because I will be dripped in red, white, and blue, and I could not be more excited for this team if they can make me excited as well.
I will say, is there a positive that Pochettino up to now has given off a very detached vibe?
Yep.
And this at least showed that he cares. He to your point, he hears the criticism, it affects him. So there is a positive in that regard.
Bingo, David Mosse. I think you hit the nail on the head in that we can be critical of his criticism back, and I think that that is fair. But there's also a huge part of me that kind of likes the fact that he said some of these things. I'm not sure that all of them were the things that he needed to say in that moment, but then there's that part of me that says, cool, all right, he's taking it seriously. He's hearing what people have to say, and he's showing that his heart and soul are in it, because unless you're not human, you tend to be affected by things that people say. You know, people always ask me, do you care when people say things? And people say things to my face and behind my back, and it's been done for years and years and years. I am not an animal, contrary to popular belief. I am not a robot, contrary to popular belief. I, like most humans, I don't like people to say negative things. I don't like people to say critical things, but I recognize, to your point, we are in an industry where that is going to happen. It comes with the territory. And it also comes with the territory when you are a coach. And that territory is very, very different when you are a coach, for example, of Argentina or of Brazil, as opposed to when you're a coach of America. So whatever Pochettino is getting when it comes to criticism, it's minuscule relative to many other countries and cultures out there. But that he is responding, I hope that means that there is a fire that is burning in him to either shut us up, to throw it back in our face, but more importantly, to deliver to the United States what he is being paid to do, which is something beautiful, something magical come next summer.
Mosse,
Looking at some of the comments, somebody mentioned Mexico in that inevitable compare and contrast. Mexico right now leading South Korea 1-0 on a goal by Raul Jimenez. I have not seen the South Korea lineup and how it compares to the one they fielded against the U.S., but for what it's worth, that's a scoreline right now.
Yeah, I was actually getting ready to ask you. So now that this was allegedly the last experimentation window for Pochettino, how different do you expect the next international window to look for this team? And were there any of the names you feel that were in on this window? Let's say, Roldan, Blackman. Not many other guys got that. Zendejas, I suppose, got an opportunity that he hadn't had before. How many of those guys do you feel now are going to be as part of that next group?
Zendejas probably won a call up for October with his goal today. I thought Roldan actually did some good things. I could see him being on the list moving forward. He could be a useful player for the U.S., but I do expect it if Tillman will be back. I do think Weston McKennie will be back. I think this was a one-window message, but I don't think Pochettino is going to prolong this. You have something to say?
Can we now all agree that with this window done, and the way that Mauricio Pochettino framed it, even though I may disagree and others may disagree, I can at least accept the fact that that's the way that he has framed it, that this was last chance saloon. This was his last opportunity to really experiment. So we've kicked the can down the line here. Can we all agree that come that next window, whoever he brings in, we can assess it as more than a training session? We can assess it.
As of now, that's what he perceived as his best squad.
Exactly.
I agree with you, yes.
And I know there's injuries, and I know that it doesn't mean you're not going to continue to have some experimental phases going through. I understand that. But all bets are off right now, okay? I am willing to give him some grace. I disagree with it. It angered me, as anybody that watched the show saw, but I am willing to say, okay, fine. This window is over. Training sessions are done. The real games start in the next window, and we are going to assess them as such. So, if the next window, we see performances individually or collectively which crap the bed, I think it's absolutely fair for us to be angered and to ask questions. And yes, to be critical of the team, of the players, and yes, of Mauricio Pochettino going forward.
So just to put some more names on it, I'm curious to see if Sargent will get another opportunity or if this was it for him, especially if Pepe's fit enough to be part of the group in the next window. How big is the hole for Gio and Musa to climb out of? Is it just a couple of good weeks at Atalanta for Musa and Gladbach for Gio, and they could be back, or no? Are they still going to be on the outside looking in? And then at center back, Blackman and Banks felt very experimental.
Yeah.
So if in the next window he calls up in theory, who he thinks are his 4 best center backs right now, other than Richards and Ream. I'm curious to see who those other 2 would be.
Yeah, I think to your point, Alexi, we were hoping and thinking this window was going to be the one where we're like, ooh, it's kind of a little bit of a preview of the guys who are really in the mix for the World Cup, and this is going to be the squad.
Two good
Well,
teams,
yeah,
two World Cup teams.
Exactly. And then we saw it and we're like, oh, here we go again, another experimentation. So I do think that when you see, and if you're a player in that moment and you get called up to this next window, you're thinking, hey, man, I have a real shot to make the World Cup. And this is the group. And now it's all about, which Pochettino has talked a lot about, the relationships on and off the field and how you are and how you mix. I'm actually pretty interested in that Musa and Gio Reyna one, because if you talk to people on the inside, it seems that Reyna's very far away from being a part of this team. But we all know if you play well and he's performing well at Gladbach, how quickly that could push him back into the mix of being a person that could maybe contribute. If we're thinking that, I'm hoping that this is the formation and it's 3-4-2-1, now I'm starting to think, okay, well, where does Yunus Musa play there? I mean, Pochettino has played him wide right. He's played him, I don't see him as being one of those 2 midfielders. So now I'm thinking, well, I don't know. Is he even in the mix there? Is he one of your best midfielders when you consider that Tanner Tessman's a player that fits this system?
It's 26-man roster, and
Yeah.
just because they're not starting doesn't mean you shouldn't bring them or shouldn't have them on the team.
Center midfield's arguably one of our strongest and deepest positions if you consider Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, Johnny Cardoso, Tanner Tessman, Yunus Musa, Aiden Morris.
The music might stop and Musa might not have a seat. Absolutely. And with Gio, he's got to play. If he's playing, because we all know Gio has an incredibly long leash, and I think fairly so, given his talent. But if he starts playing and playing on a consistent basis week after week, yeah, I mean, I think it's not a flyer because you know who Gio is.
And Gio could be the biggest beneficiary of this system, because if it's he and Pulisic, and he can drift and he can turn and he can play in that half space and play threaded balls in behind and doesn't really have to do all the defensive work, even coming on as a sub. Maybe he's what do they call him now? A game changer. It's a game changer.
Oh, don't do this.
You and I talked about this on the pod a long time ago. If the U.S. switches to this back 3 system, that right wing back spot becomes so interesting, because that might be the best landing spot for Dest, Musa, and Weah.
Yeah.
And you might end up having to pick 2 out of those 3.
And that's where you start thinking about the depth. And if I'm a coach and I'm building out my roster, how many center backs are you bringing? And then do you value players that can play a number of different positions? As Weah could play as a forward, he could play as a wingback. Des could play on the right and the left. And I don't know, that seems like the fun part of being a coach, that you can mix and match all these things, but you have to commit to a system that feels it sets you up for success.
Now, let's talk about upcoming opponents, because there's some news on that front. We keep mentioning the October window. That's against Ecuador and Australia. Then November will be Uruguay and Paraguay. And there are reports today that in March, it could be Portugal and Belgium, which for Cristiano Ronaldo would be playing in the U.S. for the first time since 2014. Those would be 2 very interesting opponents. Let me say this, and then I'll kick it over to you guys. As you mentioned, being the host does have its drawbacks in that you don't go through qualifying, so you don't get to play competitive matches away to Mexico, away to Canada, away to Panama, away to Costa Rica. Those games would have toughened up this group. But the positive is it's fewer CONCACAF games. It's more opportunities to play quality teams from other regions. And I have to say, if it ends up being Portugal and Belgium, then U.S. soccer will have done its job scheduling-wise over the course of the cycle. When you think about the U.S. played Germany early in the cycle. Then before the Copa America, it was Colombia and Brazil. Before the Gold Cup, it was Turkey and Switzerland. You have all the games I just mentioned: South Korea, Japan in this window, Ecuador, which I think a very good team, beat Argentina tonight in October, Uruguay and Paraguay, and then Portugal and Belgium in March, and presumably somebody good in that June window when you can play games before the World Cup. So that'll be a lot of interesting games that could provide useful data points.
You take what you can get. Like you said, without the qualifying process, this team hasn't had that that difficulty, that good difficulty that comes with a qualifying process. But again, you risk having a warped sense of reality and a warped perception of what your team is. I mean, we saw tonight, everyone's happier, but the reality is that this is a BC type of Japan team that if you made 11 changes and you look on the bench, there's a hell of a team that the U.S. didn't face. There's nothing we can do about that, but you could absolutely have that happen where some of these big teams come in and they're not trying to be coy, but whether it's injuries or they're have other desires in terms of what they want to get out of the game. So it's going to be hard. And maybe that's to Mauricio Pochettino's point in that you want to arrive in the best possible form to do good things in the summer. You want to peak at the summer, but these are the only games that we have. And again, I go back to how important next summer is. Yes, there's going to be another World Cup, but this is going to be a World Cup unlike any of the other World Cups because it's at home and because it is in a country. As much as I love it, I recognize and I am honest about the fact that soccer is not king. So when we have a World Cup like this, it's this incredible opportunity to bring everybody into the tent and a lot of people that haven't been there before. And I don't want to waste that opportunity. I want to give us the best possible chance of being successful.
And you were in Brazil in 2014. If it does end up being Portugal and Belgium, people are going to harken back to those games. The U.S. faced Portugal in the group stage of that World Cup, thought they had the game won, and then the last kick of the game, Ronaldo to Nani 2-2, and then, of course, round of 16, Belgium, Tim Howard.
But we, as a nation, and Stu can attest to this, one of the things that we actually have done well from a U.S. men's national team perspective is play the underdog role. We actually are very, very good at that. We rise to the occasion oftentimes when people say we can't. I mean, you need look only against England, last World Cup, for example. So there will be hopefully some moments where that more comfortable type of position of being the underdog happens going forward. I don't know how many there are going to be because there are also going to be some times where we are considered better or at least on par with whoever we're playing. And sometimes that's the most difficult thing to do is to be the favorite and learn how to consistently be competitive and to win while you're the favorite. I don't think that this team has necessarily learned that. And I say this team, not just the team that we saw tonight, but the U.S. men's national team in general. And I'm not talking about playing CONCACAF games. I'm talking about facing the elite of the world and becoming one of the elite of the world. So who knows ultimately what it looks like come next summer when the games actually matter. And I know I'm being facetious, and I know, listen, where's my camera here? I recognize that I can be an ass, all right? I recognize that at times I can say things that are incredibly facetious in the way that I'm going about talking about what's going on. But it did rub me the wrong way when Mauricio Pochettino talked about it just being a training session. This is a national team game. This is representing the country that I'm assuming everybody knows and loves and would do anything, whether it's a quote unquote friendly or not. And to kind of belittle it and talk about it as a friendly, yes, that rubbed me the wrong way. I understand kind of what Pochettino is trying to say, but at this moment, read the room, dude. Understand the reaction that you had, understand the responsibility that you have, or have somebody that's there to explain it to you. But telling the American soccer public out there, given how we feel, that you shouldn't worry about it, and all you should care about is what happens next summer, and these are just kind of training sessions.
But,
That's
Lex, I think this is going to happen to all of us over the
Sure.
next 10 months, is that we have been talking about this World Cup for 8 years since it was announced. And I've even found every single day something new comes up and I start thinking about, well, that's in the spring. And then every time I look at the calendar, we're in September. It's going to be October. I think once that draw happens in December, we've talked about that draw December 5th, everything is going to get very real very fast, and you're going to get that little bit of extra buzz, that feeling that this is not coming, this is here. And the friendlies in the spring will feel that much more important because of that. The opponents, I think, raise that level of intensity as well. You're going to be playing these big opponents at big stadiums that are going to have big crowds and big stars. And so I really do think while the players, I know it feels real, it's going to feel that much more real, and there's going to feel that much more for Pochettino, an understanding of like, we can't talk about it like that. It's not a training session. This matters, and these are important moments now. That is going to be amplified times 1,000, especially after that draw comes out and we can say, wow, okay, U.S. is playing opening day SoFi Stadium against Morocco, in Seattle on this day, and we can start to plan things out. At that point, there's like a realness to the whole thing.
But you would agree with me, and this goes to you too, Mosse, what we talked about on the previous pod. It never occurred to me that, what do we say, Tuesday, September 9th in the year 2025, like we said, 275 days away from the World Cup, that this would be the way we would be
Yeah.
thinking about this team at this
I
moment.
can
And
agree with you on that for sure.
that's what is disappointing to me, because I would have thought we would have been further along. But this is the reality. This is where we are. So you know what? We deal with it. We dig out from it. We find something good. We build upon it. And we use whatever negativity there is out there, whatever criticism there is out there, to hopefully propel us forward. And I know I'm talking about it in the way that Pochettino and this team should look at it. We're still going to assess it from the outside, but there is possibility out there. This is certainly not doom and gloom. And a result and a performance like this tonight, it's a good thing. We have to take it with a grain of salt, which I think we are doing. But again, winning is better than losing.
Before we wrap things up, can we talk about some other regions?
Sure, go ahead.
Oh, you're chomping at the bit. For
All right,
some
go for it.
Well, we're first up. We're now up to 18 teams. Tunisia qualified. They become the second African
Congratulations.
side, along with Morocco, who you just mentioned. Today was the conclusion of CONMEBOL qualifying. We found out that Bolivia will head to the Intercontinental Playoffs. Venezuela, the only CONMEBOL nation yet to qualify for World Cup, and that drought will continue. And you guys are my witnesses. I texted our colleague Fran Arthur today, who's Venezuelan, and I told her Brazil is going to mail it in La Paz today. A meaningless game, B team. So you better handle your own business. And Venezuela did not. They lost at home 6-3 to Colombia, tennis score. And Brazil, as I predicted, lost 1-0 away to Bolivia. And so Bolivia leapfrogged Venezuela in the standings. And Fran actually texted me, "Thanks for nothing." That's disgraceful.
Wow.
He's blaming Brazil now.
Wow.
Maybe if Venezuela had had more support in the games against Argentina, because if you listen to this pod, you know, Fran Arthur, a Venezuelan, is such a messy fangirl. She roots for Argentina when they face her native Venezuela, which you agree is...
Don't even get me started on that. It boggles my little brain.
Speaking of Argentina, they lost 1-0 away to Ecuador tonight, which we thought was a meaningless game because both teams have already qualified. But both Otamendi and Moises Caicedo got themselves sent off. We'll see if there's any shenanigans, but based on the rules, those players will miss the opening match of the World Cup.
That's the dumbest thing in the world. That is
They will change that. They find a way in those situations. They'll miss the next qualifier for the following Copa America. Yeah, whatever.
I mean, yeah, unless it's egregious. Come on.
And then just lastly, I do think we're finally going to get Erling Haaland at a major tournament. Norway beat Moldova 11-1 today.
I watched some of that. It was
was did the score reflect the game?
I would hope so.
Erling Haaland with
Smash
5
the ground.
goals.
and by the way, Holland, when they got a penalty in Norway at one point, one of his teammates was on a hat trick, and he was already on 4 goals. And how nice of him to let his teammates score
How
to get a
pissed
hat
off
trick.
is the
And then
Norwegian
he
goalkeeper,
scored again
right?
later. Like he scored in the 83rd as well for his. And the other guy scored.
Yeah,
Asgard
4
scored
goals.
in the 4th in the 92nd minute.
Imagine scoring 4 goals in a game and you're not your team's leading scorer in
Right.
that match.
Yeah.
Right?
And also Asgard, when he scored the penalty to get his hat trick, Holland went sprinting to grab the ball out of the net. At that point, it was 9-1. Holland, of course, you'll have the exact stat on this. He kind of made his name, didn't he? Was it the U17 World Cup?
Oh yeah,
How many goals did
we
he
did it.
score in
I
one
think it was
game?
a match against Honduras. He
Was it
scored like 9
7?
goals.
Was it
It was
9?
something
Yeah,
like
something
that.
insane. And everybody's like, that kind of stands out. This kid might be good. But
Greed is good. Greed is
turns out
good.
It's really good.
When you're scoring goals. All right. Anything else before we go? For you? Got anything?
Yeah, a couple things.
Yes.
You know, we celebrated your 40th birthday the other day. I do want to congratulate our colleague Johnny Araya. Today is his 40th
Oh,
birthday.
big
Oh,
Johnny.
there we go.
Big listener of the pod, too. He said he was watching that entire your rant last game. Yeah, he had a lot of comments in the control room the other day.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, great. Well, you know, we aim to please over here.
Also,
on,
I'm going to
State of the
sneak in a little What Are We Watching?
Union. Oh, okay.
This new HBO show, Task, starring Mark Ruffalo. It's been getting a lot of buzz. The first episode aired on Sunday. It was tremendous. This is going to be the next great HBO water cooler show. Did you watch Mayor of Easttown?
I
Kate
did,
Winslet?
yes.
This is the same creator from that, very similar vibe. So
But as we know, this is a work in progress, and so I can't watch it until it's done, right?
correct. It's only 7 episodes, so it'll be done very quickly.
Okay,
You'll
you
be
let
I
me know when it's
started
done.
4 seasons last night on Netflix. It's Steve Carell's kind of,
It's a remake.
is it?
Mm.
Yeah, rom-com, like
Yeah.
3 couples, and there's all kinds of
You know,
2 episodes. It's an easy watch. My wife does not like to watch anything intense before bed. Like, I was trying to get into all these documentaries last
Yeah.
night. She's like, nope, Can't watch that. Can't watch that.
Oh,
So
my
this
wife
was
does
like-
that all the time. So, do we have to go to bed with serial
Yeah,
killers?
yeah. She claims she has a nightmare every time.
Yeah,
So
I know.
I texted Stu this. I'll mention it on the air. When my parents were in town, we went on a tour of the Doheny Mansion. Edward Doheny, this oil tycoon, early 1900s. He was the inspiration for the Daniel Day-Lewis character in There Will Be Blood. And the tour started with the slideshow presentation, and the woman was using her own laptop. And I noticed that one of the other tabs she had open was a YouTube video of Love Island UK edition.
Priorities. Priorities.
she's an OG, man. She knows where the real stuff's at.
Oh, my
Season
goodness.
1 and 2.
Oh, my
Full on
goodness.
debauchery.
All right. Well, the window comes to an end here, but we will be doing a show tomorrow, Mosse. So we'll get that. Look ahead, look back as we get back into the swing of things when it comes to the club game and all of that that's going on. Thank you, Stu, for showing up for these last
was a
couple
pleasure,
of
boys.
episodes. You're
We got to
wonderful.
win. We got 3
I know.
points.
We got
Oh,
we
wait,
got to
no,
win.
it's
So
friendly.
that's
It's
a good.
We won the training session.
We can argue and we can disagree of different things out there, but really when it comes down to it, a win is good. Winning, my friends, is better than losing. I have said that for years. You can make the t-shirts. So here's to many, many more wins going forward. But it's done. This window is done. Next window, that's when it really, I guess, gets serious. Or not. Either way, have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Like I said, we'll be back here tomorrow to do another show tomorrow. Until then, my friends, and as always, size the day.